hindsight being what it is, it may not have been a bad decision, but let's keep it moving here. And let's talk about, something you said on Wrestling Observer Live. Meltzer would report that you were looking at putting Amy Dumas, Miss Congeniality and ECW, and Poppy Chulo together, and they may be introduced in the next 4 to 6 weeks. And allegedly, you also said that Sick Boy in WCW was brought in for an evaluation this coming week, and there were plans to bring him in shortly, but he may do some work, sort of get him ready. And JR also is particularly high on Steve Bradley and Barry Buchanan as far as developmental wrestlers, and he expects D'Lo Brown to sign a new contract, and says that Taz's debut isn't definite, as they don't yet have a firm grasp on how they want to present his debut. So we know that we're going to see Taz debut here, but there's lots of other names on here that I don't know when we'll talk about again. Let's start with Barry Buchanan. We know that he's going to come in and have a few different roles within the WWF. He's got a lot of size, Southern guy. And then for whatever reason, it didn't click. Why do you think that is?
Sometimes guys just don't, no matter how hard they try, no matter how hard everybody in the equation tries, Barry just did not connect with the audience at that point in time. We never brought a better human being, reliable, trustworthy, a great addition to any locker room than Barry Buchanan, Bull Buchanan, wherever you want to, he went through a lot of incarnations.
B squared.
Always willing to try something, So it just, sometimes people just don't click and connect. And maybe that's part of the promotion's fault by not finding something that was more click worthy, perhaps you might say. But he was a good guy. Steve Bradley was a very solid, fundamentally sound, had some charisma. What a giant of a guy. Barry Buchanan had the size that the WWE always coveted. But just connecting with the audience is what you never know until you get there. But as far as the build up, the locker room, the training, the physical conditioning, skill levels, both those guys, Bradley and Buchanan, had it. And so did D'Lo. D'Lo had a lot of charisma, and D'Lo getting into the Nation of Domination eventually was a pretty good deal for him. He got some notoriety, got some exposure, but D'Lo was kind of underrated in a lot of ways. And so we had good young guys. All those guys I mentioned are athletic. They're all physically tough. They're all reliable. Everything you wanted. But then you get to the final, you get to the last dance of the night, and maybe they just don't have the rhythm to connect to the music that you're hearing. One of those situations. But all those guys are solid human beings, man, and they were exactly what we were looking for at that point in time.
Let's talk about, you're going to bring in Amy, and of course we know she's going to go on to be Lita. Mm-hmm. But originally, when we first see her as a fan, she's paired with Poppy Chulo. Of course, we know she's going to go on to be with the Hardy Boys and then quite the single star on her own. And she was, often linked with Edge. Really a bona fide Hall of Famer, but we didn't know that when we first see her. What was it about her that stood out in ECW that maybe got you guys' attention?
Her look, her athleticism, Hurricane Ranas, topes, all that fancy name stuff for the Latin or Mexican moves. She was just really athletic and fearless. I thought she had an enormous sex appeal. She wasn't a blonde. She was different. When I first met her, I think she had not had her breast augmentation.
That's right.
Which is totally her call, wasn't ours. And that, of course, added to her look, or it contributed to her look, whether you think it was added or not. But she just had it. She did connect to the audience. For her eyes, her body English, she connected with you if you're sitting in the audience watching her. And that was some part of her magic, I always thought. But basically, that she trained with men. She lived, in a Spartan-esque environment in Mexico to pay her dues, to learn these moves. And that took a lot of courage for a single woman to leave the quote-unquote safety of her own surroundings in the States to go to Mexico City and exist there in a men's world in a strange country, and being a female. Big props to Lita for that, and but I always thought she had high hopes. I teased her one time. We were in a meeting, maybe the first meeting. She came to see me in my office, and she was wearing a really cool business suit. It's either lime green or light blue or something. It was light color, solid business suit. I remember that very, very distinctly. And I said, "Oh, by the way, what's that little tattoo you got on your arm?" It wasn't little. And look, you're in a different era there. Now nobody would say nothing about it. I was curious what maybe it meant something. Maybe the artwork or tattoo had significance and meaning that we could utilize.
Right.
So she jumped up, took her jacket off, and showed me the tattoo. There was nothing salacious or bad or it certainly was better than Ludwig Borga's SS tattoo on his calf. God. And so she had it, Conrad. You could sometimes you feel that somebody's got it. And look, Papi Chulo had it too, but he wasn't as dedicated, at least in my view, at that point in time, as Amy was. She really wanted to make it. And because everything she'd gone through in Mexico, when I talk with Vince about her, he was impressed with it too. She's not going to quit on us. Bear Bryant said one time, he was a great football coach at Alabama. You might remember him. He said, my practices are hard. My practices are brutal because you're going to quit on my ass. I want you to quit on my ass in practice, not in a game. And she was not going to quit on the environment, the challenges, the uphill grind to get to where she wanted to go. And so she was a big get for us, as it turned out. And she never disappointed me whatsoever at any level. I had a lot of time for Lita.
A lot to unpack on what all you just covered there. You said, she had a breast augmentation, but it was her call. It wasn't something that you guys suggested. Had you in previous discussions with other talent suggested that they have an augmentation?
Nope. Sure didn't. Didn't step in that territory because you're defenseless. You're defenseless if something goes awry. It's got to be a personal decision made by the talent. If they believe it will enhance their TV persona and their overall look as to what is acceptable by general society, then that's going to be their call. And now if they need time off to get it done, obviously, if they need money to help them advance some money to get surgery done, I think we've done those things. But that was always based on the talent's decision. And it makes people want to roll their eyes at this one, but it just wasn't my place to tell you to get a boob job and then something go wrong. And you did it because you felt like you were compelled to because your boss said to. And now you get issues. The WWE's got a problem. So that's kind of where we were with that. We just never did that to any. And I'm sure there's going to be somebody who says, well, I knew if I didn't do it. Yeah, okay, fine.
Well, yeah, that's what I was going to say is, do you think some female talent would say this was our sort of equivalent of when guys would say, well, no, they didn't tell me I had to take steroids, but I knew if I didn't, then I wouldn't be on TV. And it becomes this artificial psychoanalysis, and you get in your head and you wind up doing it. The other thing I wanted to ask about, because I don't think we ever talked about this. You said Ludwig Borga had an SS tattoo on his calf. How did you guys find out about that? And what was the plan of action?
Well, I think somebody saw him in a shower. I didn't have guys do, body cavity searches or nothing, man. Nobody dropped their drawers in my office.
Sure.
I ain't Harvey Weinstein here.
Right.
We found out about it. And of course the deal was, I even think, if I'm not mistaken, he was wearing boots that that were low cut, and he had a very diminutive SS tattoo. It wasn't huge. It wasn't, overbearingly large, but it was there. And so I think the discussion should have been, we can't use you. Because if we do, we're basically condoning the Holocaust. That's how I looked at it. And I didn't think that was anything we wanted to be compared to. So he got different boots and covered it up. So I don't think there might have been maybe a handful of times before he got new boots that was even seen there. But it was very uncomfortable. And he was uncomfortable. And he was untalented. But he had $1 million look. and then had he looked like a Ferrari, Conrad, with a 4-cylinder motor.
Right.
He just didn't have the aptitude, but boy, he had the great look, the intensity, the strength, all that stuff. But sometimes guys think that's all they need, and they don't need to work any harder to get better at their skill set. But the SS tattoo was very uncomfortable. And when he left, I don't even remember what the circumstances were, to be honest with you. Nobody shed any tears. And it's sad. He died much too young. And he never got away from controversy in the dark cloud from whatever it was, several things I'm hearing. So that was a little uncomfortable situation there.